Thank you. I'm Elizabeth Otters-White, as Michael said, and I am a faculty member in the finance department in the School of Business at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm joined by Mary Ginder, or at least I will be joined by Mary Ginder in a moment, who is helping me lead this training this afternoon. Before we start, let me just echo what both Jen and Michael have said, and that is that we're really so pleased that all of you have taken your time to participate in this with us. It's a really exciting project, and I think we're going to be able to learn a lot and to move the state of knowledge forward in this area, so appreciate your time. So before we jump into the training, I just want to highlight, as you have seen, you've got these binders in front of you. The first thing I want to mention is that the survey that Michael mentioned is the last page of the training materials section. So it's right near the front. So if you would make sure to take time to fill that out before you go. And as you can see here, and from looking in front of you, there's a lot of information here. We've tried to really provide everything that you're going to need to deliver these lessons to your classrooms. We know that you are already incredibly pressed for time, so we want this to be as easy for you as possible. So we've got training materials, we've got all of the detailed lesson plans, and we'll talk through those today, as well as other information about how to administer the lessons. Any visual aids that you need are here. Copies for your students of the exercises are here. You may be confused. I don't know if they told you when you came in, but you see you've got piles here of shrink-wrapped copies as well as copies of things in your binders. You've got 20 copies of each student exercise in the binders. So if you have 20 or fewer students, you're covered there. If you have more than 20 students in your classroom, then you'll also want to take one of the shrink-wrapped. We couldn't fit them all in the binder, so that's the, that's the situation there. Okay, and then at the end, there's also some additional information, Q&A, about the program. All right, so let me just overview quickly our plan. Mary and I will have about an hour and 45 minutes to spend with you working through the curriculum. As Michael said, we'll do some of it together as a big group. We'll do pieces of it in smaller breakout groups and then come back together and process those. Please do stop Mary or me at any point if you have questions on anything. I think that's most efficient, but we will leave extra time at the end also for any final questions. So what we'll do is I'm going to start by going through lesson 1. This is sort of an introductory lesson. I think it's probably the easiest to talk through as a full group. Then we'll break up into discussion groups, and I'll tell you exactly how that's going to happen when we get to that point. Come back together, review a couple of the details. Michael will come up at that point and talk a little bit more about the research protocol. And then, as I said, we'll have time at the end for final questions and answers. Any questions at this point before we jump into the overview of the curriculum? Okay. And please do let me know if you can't hear me at any point, okay? So we have adapted a set of lessons from a curriculum called Financial Fitness for Life. This is actually a set of curricula. It covers K through 12. So they have one curriculum for K through 2, another for 3 through 5, et cetera. We've worked with that upper elementary curriculum, so grades 3 through 5, and we've adapted it to be reasonable for our limited time frame, okay? If you are interested in, at the end of the study, getting all of the materials from the 3 through 5 curriculum to potentially use in your class in the future, we're very happy to provide those to you. I think there was a box at the check-in, is that right, Karen, where they could check. If you didn't check that box but you're interested, just let Karen or Nicole know and we'll make sure to get you those materials at the end. But what we've done is just taken a subset of that. As I said, tried to make it as accessible as possible. There are three primary reasons that we chose Financial Fitness for Life as our curriculum. One, there is research that demonstrates that this is an effective curriculum. Obviously, that's really critical for our study. 2, it maps really nicely into state standards as well as national standards for this kind of education. And 3, it's comprehensive. So it covers everything that you need, step-by-step lesson plans, and we thought that was critical given the time frame in which we're asking you to administer these lessons. So we've broken it down, as I may have already mentioned, into 5 lessons. Each is designed to take about 45 minutes. The first one is introductory. Then lessons 2 through 4 fit together really nicely. They basically are delving deeper and deeper into this idea of savings. So starting out with a goal, how do we establish goals for our saving? Then how do we translate that goal into a plan? And then finally talking about details of savings accounts and how those things work. And then finally, the fifth lesson really ties everything together and comes to this question of budgeting. So going back to the first introductory lesson where we introduced trade-offs, we come right back to that in lesson 5, but even on a more global scale. So it's not just a question of, do I buy the candy or do I buy the toy? Okay, but it's I have a whole list of wants and potential sources of income, and how do I think about balancing those and trading those off? Okay, so that's where we're going to go with the 5 lessons. So I'm going to just jump right into lesson 1. Are there questions before I do that? Okay. I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get into these breakout groups and really work through the other lessons. So as I already mentioned, the first lesson really is an introduction to the material. It is pretty general, introduces a lot of key concepts that we'll then be returning to as we continue in the future lessons. So the first thing that students will do is just define some terms. Really, if I just, we can see we've got these bullet points that outline the key points. I think that this final bullet point really kind of sums up the key material of what's happening in this lesson. That is, using the concept of opportunity cost to analyze trade-offs and make informed decisions about saving. So, I don't know about you, but certainly I'm quite confident that kids I know don't really know this term opportunity cost. It's not something we kind of toss around a lot. So let's get to a little bit more discussion of how we're going to introduce that material. So this lesson starts with an introductory discussion with the class based on the phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Just the common phrase. So we start by talking about what does that mean? When were there cases in which you wanted 2 different things but could only have one of them? How did you make that decision? And then mapping that into this idea of opportunity cost, which is what you gave up by choosing what you chose, okay? And to be specific, I think of opportunity cost as the runner-up, right? It's not the full list of every other thing you could have done. It's the next highest alternative, right? So it's the runner-up. I want to do all these things, but I especially want to play soccer and basketball. I can only do one. Which one will I choose? Say it's soccer, then basketball was my opportunity cost. I gave that up to choose soccer. Okay? So just talking through that notion with them, having them phrase their own trade-offs or decisions in that language. And then you will introduce a fable. It's an update of Aesop's fable, The Grasshopper and the Ant, or The Ant and the Grasshopper. I've seen it with both names. But basically, it's a story about how it's difficult to make choices and how sometimes people regret the choices that they've made in the end. So we've got 2 main players here, a hardworking ant who saves money and puts it away so that she can do things later, and a grasshopper who really just likes to play video games and kind of hang out and spends money as soon as he gets it. And so through this story, we illustrate these concepts of things like opportunity cost and saving and incentives. Okay? Any questions so far? Again, all of these materials are in your binders, and you'll be able to look through them in some detail later. Question? So after reading the story, and that can be done, of course, individually or as a class, then there's a follow-up discussion. Some of the questions relate very directly to the material in the story. For example, what is the moral of the story? How did the ant earn money? Others are more general or try to tie the lessons in the story to the student's particular personal experiences. Okay? So again, getting at these trade-offs, right? Trade-off meaning you give up something to get something, and really illustrating that through this fable and also through their own choices that they've made. So what trade-offs have you made? Have you ever acted like the grasshopper? These kinds of issues. And then finally at the end, there's a wrap-up section that's labeled closure in the lesson that just kind of hits some of these key points again, coming back to these key definitions or questions. All right? So that was a lightning fast overview of that lesson. Are there questions that come to mind right away off the bat from this? Okay, does it seem reasonable? Okay, all right. So what we'd like to do now, as Michael said, is we want to spend as much time as possible in smaller groups. I think that allows you to really work through things and get a better understanding of things. So here's the plan. We've got you seated by tables, and again, hopefully the number on your name tag matches the number at your table. If not, you can move as needed. But we'll be breaking up into 4 groups. Each will be led by a facilitator. So Mary is doing the first group, which will be focusing on lesson 2. That's over in this corner. Michael in the back is doing group 2, which focuses on lesson 3. I will be taking group 3, focusing on lesson 4. And then Karen, who you met, I think, when you came in, will be taking group 4, focusing on lesson 5. We're going to take about 25 minutes. We'll see then, maybe we need a little bit more. I think some lessons require a little more time, maybe some less. The facilitator will guide the group through a discussion of the lesson, work through some of the materials, and the point will be, the objective hopefully, is for each group then to report back on the key pieces of information that are contained in that lesson. So we broke it out into these bullet points, right? So when you come back, you'll be thinking about, just to jump ahead, important things to note about the lesson, tips for teachers, other thoughts. And your facilitator will guide you through exactly what we mean by each of those. But the objective is to have a reporter, 1 or 2 people from each of these groups, come up when we come back together and provide that feedback on the lesson and to advise other teachers as to how to handle that. So each group here today will be looking at just 1 lesson.